I'm used to every single type of tech disruption, tech error, tech everything after
It's
COVID, I think
live
we all
now.
Oh, yes, I see that. Yes, we're live. So first of all, I wanted to say thank you to all of you for being here, especially considering how difficult of a topic this is. We'll try our best to keep it a nuanced and sensitive discussion, but also I want it to be a space where all of you can talk about your experiences or not talk about them if you don't want to. Think of it as a flexible space and it's safe. Um, I wanted everybody to kind of introduce themselves, but Muniba we're still waiting for. So we'll just start directly with introductions and then go forward. This time we're kind of doing it alphabetically. So for example, it will be Linda first, Patsy second, and Uwanah last. All right. And then, oh, sorry, me between Patsy and Uwanah. So Linda, it's to you.
Yeah, sure thing. My brain automatically was like the alphabet in my head.
That we don't have A or B or C. So
Yeah, yeah. The autistic mind here. Yeah, so my name is Linda, Linda Coogan Byrne. I am a few things. I first and foremost am a music consultant and a publicist in the entertainment and music industry for oh professionally about 22 years. But I started playing music when I was about 15. And has have been immersed in the music industry in some capacity since then. Um, I then kind of meandered into activism about a decade ago, being a stoic feminist. And with the absolute off chance that COVID happened, I was given a lot of time on my hands that I would have otherwise have been, busy with work. And in that period, I started to launch gender audits on the music industry, starting with festivals and radio, playlists and how they're arranged and orchestrated. And that just blew up into a very big campaign. And it's been going strong the last 6 years. I've written a book about it. I've won a few really cool awards due to the work behind the campaign. And yeah, just from that, I ended up meeting a lot of different feminist organizations. And within the music industry, when you go into looking at data and speaking with women in music, um, there's a pattern that emerges, and that pattern sadly all leads to sexual abuse, sexual assault, sexual exploitation with women artists and female identifying artists. And it just kind of swayed the work more into working in that area, especially with journalism. I'm also a broadcast host, or I'm a contributor for different TV, radio, press platforms. I've been featured in The Guardian, The Times, The Independent, all the kind of usual major outlets, which is an honor and it's great. But under the circumstances that I always appear, I wish I didn't have to appear on these platforms. But yeah, so they mostly echo gender inequality, systematic and racial bias within the music industry, and also sexual violence towards women. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. Work in the music industry as a consultant, and then activism and campaigning for gender equity. And yeah, that's me. I'm from Ireland as well, but I'm based in Spain today.
Fabulous to have you. So glad to meet you. My name is Patsy Ferguson. I'm the editor-in-chief of Fourth Wave. We are an international feminist publication on Medium, where we have 61,000 followers and contributors from all over the world. Our mission is to stamp out sexism, racism, homophobia, and other supremacy-infected ideologies that suck. And we want to lift the voices of girls and women. And this live stream is part of that effort. So I'm very happy to be here. Please look for us all on Medium, by the way, where writers get paid. And that's lovely to get paid. So look, we all publish there. So look for us there.
all right, and my name is Sangeeta. First of all, I'm the host for this live stream. So all the questions, everything will be coming from me. And I'm also the development editor for Fourth Wave. essentially part of my job isn't just the editing, but is also potentially pitching for um, what do you call them? Grants and having oh my God, my brain just completely spaced out. Uh, having more alliances with other feminist and feminist leaning organizations in the future. So our goal is to expand Fourth Wave into kind of a community and an ecosystem where we are doing better research and we are putting people who deserve funding and deserve their voice heard on the map, essentially. And yeah, so that's from me. I'm currently based in Italy, but I was born and raised in the Middle East, and I'm Indian. So that sort of will show up throughout the live stream when we talk about more global perspectives as well. I would love to know how it's like in all of your countries from here on. And now to Uwanah.
Okay, hi. My name is Esther Uwanah Edith. I'm from Nigeria and I'm an editor for Patsy.
Pretty much. Okay. We're gonna kind of go on without Muniba for now, and then when she comes in, hopefully we'll be able to fill her in. So this live stream is specifically called Rape Kills because we wanted to shed light on two very specific situations, which is the way that victims are treated, not just when you go to court, but also by society as a whole, and how we are treated before that. The point where when you see someone having gone through a terrible trial or a really difficult time trying to get their voice heard vis-a-vis rape or sexual assault, you kind of silence yourself, and it almost mars a part of your psyche in a way. So with that, we're basically going to be talking about Noelia Castillo Ramos's case, which was she was a 25-year-old woman who was recently euthanized by her request because in 2022 she tried to commit suicide and that resulted in her becoming paraplegic, and she just wanted to end her suffering. And it all came down to being not only a victim of gang rape, but also interpartner violence, and then ending up in a situation that felt like an impasse. She had neither resources nor support, nor really anywhere to turn to where people would listen and she could get justice. So we're kind of stressing on the fact that not only was it not covered in its entirety by the media, or basically at all in the beginning, that's how I found Linda, because she was the
Yeah.
source where I heard the story from, and on Instagram, that too. And so that's one. And the other thing is, it is odd, not even just odd, it feels egregiously bad that it was, I wouldn't say easier, but quicker for her to get her euthanasia signed off and ready to go over getting justice for her gang rape, which sets a really bad precedent, not just for women in Spain, but everywhere in the world. We're basically learning by watching that you would rather be dead, or you would rather be gone and disappear in quiet than actually get the justice that you deserve. So first of all, I wanted to give you guys the floor for a bit to kind of just tell me, how did you feel when you got to know about the story, and whether there was a first thought or a first fear that came up in your mind when you heard about it. Linda, over to you.
Yeah, I'm just like when I first obviously I've been in Spain the last few weeks, and my feed, my algorithms are to Spain, and I follow a lot of feminist accounts between Spain, the UK, and Ireland. And when it came up, it was an article from the BBC, who I've worked with a lot over the years, and they don't always get it right. And it was just the headline was basically the father. Um, tries to get an injunction one way or another to stop his daughter from receiving euthanasia. And I read the article and I thought, oh my God, that must be, God, the poor man. Like my initial reaction was, oh, what a good father, he's trying to do something. And then I read the article, and it was a religious conservative group that were helping the father, supporting him through this battle with the legal system in Spain, who had granted his daughter euthanasia in 2024. They had succeeded in putting an injunction against that for a number, I think it was like nearly a year, which is why it didn't happen until this year. And basically, it was all of this detail about the euthanasia, and not anywhere in any part of the article did it say why she was getting. She just said she was it was a troubled teen, then it grew into a young troubled young woman who had formerly tried to commit suicide, and because the article was kind of updated, and I was just kind of going, wow. So I looked online to see if there's anything more behind it, because my brain went, well, what's the context here? Context. And I didn't see anything come up anywhere. And then this article popped up because I had an alert on my Google alerts. And so it was that BBC article, one random article that went nowhere again. And this interview that Noea had done, with one single interview that she had done, where she speaks about euthanasia. And then I'm reading it and I'm reading it. And then boom, it just comes to she threw herself out of a five-story building because she had been gang raped. Doesn't say the whereabouts. There has been media speculation that it was in a health care clinic, or a place where you go to that is sponsored and paid for by the state if you're in disarray, if you don't have financial means to support yourself. So basically, a state facility that's supposed to be to care for people. But then other people say it happened in a nightclub. It's this speculation at this point. People suggest who it was, where, when it happened, but there actually it was not in the one interview that Noea did. She did not mention the whereabouts, so that has to be really clear, because a lot of people are there's a lot of misinformation going around. But and before that, she said she had been raped by her boyfriend, who obviously wasn't her boyfriend after the fact. So this is a girl who has had multiple sexual assaults, and was already grappling with a very, very difficult world at the moment. And she had a very difficult childhood in terms of socioeconomic situations with her parents. They didn't have the means to look after her, so the Spanish state put her into the system. I was also in the system when I was a kid. I know that it's not very nice. And you move around a lot if you're not a young child, because nobody wants anybody that's older. So you're kind of, when you're at that age where you're not a young baby and you're not someone that, family can take in, and you can become their family quicker because you're younger and you grow into them. It's just harder to place older children and young adults, young teenagers. And yeah, so I think I went through an array of emotions. So first, the discovery of the euthanasia side of it, and then the searching for the context, and then realizing the context was a woman that was raped, and then going back to how media and society constantly fail victims of violence and always protect the men, and how, stories are told, reshaped, softened to just cushion men. So rage then followed. A lot of rage. I don't know whether I can curse on this, so I'm going to behave. But a lot of rage, and I've been a victim. I was in a child paedophile ring from the age of 6. And I have been raped probably 4 times. The
I'm
last
so
time I was drugged, so I don't really remember that much of it, but I, have different memories since, and it's horrific, and it's it's a an experience where you do go through stages. Now, I'm not saying everyone, but for me, and I can relate to Noelia, where you can go through experiences and thoughts where you don't want to be here anymore, like because it's the pain and the grief and the trauma and the denial and the shame and then everything else that goes with it. So I felt extremely connected to this young woman because I could connect with her on a lot of levels, but also I was just shocked at how a system and a healthcare system at that that is supposed to be well tutored and aware of the effects of trauma, especially extreme sexual violence towards women, and how, suicidal ideation is a part of that. And it can last for years. Some people it lasts for months, some people it can last for a few days, but other people it can last years. And I do believe that she was going through that phase. And again, I'm not saying phase to take away her autonomy and her choice that she made, but what type of place are we at in society where the choice of trying to get help and trying to get over extreme trauma is no longer on the cards because the alternative is, look, I'll just press reset and hope the next place I arrive is softer and gentler to us. It's just very sad, rage and sadness.
Wow, that's a lot, and it, for me as a grandmother, it feels really scary to have two. I actually have four granddaughters, but I see two of them frequently, and just to worry about what kind of place they're living in, how to protect them, if it's even possible to protect them. When I saw the story about Noelia, I was shocked. I read the story you wrote, Linda, and also Muniba, who was here earlier but must be having some network problems in Pakistan because she blinked off the screen and hasn't come back. But she also wrote about it, and it was shocking to me. And I started to watch the video of Noelia's last interview, but I couldn't quite figure out how to translate it into English, and I also didn't want to watch it. It's just scary, and it makes me. It reminds me of the Giselle Pellico case where a husband lined up men to rape his wife after he drugged her. And so many men were willing to do that and didn't even want to say in court that they didn't rape her, even though she was clearly unconscious, and that they thought it was okay because her husband said it was okay. Like women don't have humanity, like they're little puppets or dolls. I don't know. It's all very overwhelming. And Noelia just was so beautiful. Her her young her sad young face in that interview was it just not that beauty makes you more valuable, but you just feel tenderhearted. I felt very tender, and I'm feeling that way now. So that's how I responded.
I understand that, and
Mhm.
I am so sorry for both of you, like especially Linda. What you shared, I'm sure, was really difficult for you to share. Patsy, also, I'll give you a minute. Uwanah, do you want to go next?
Yeah. I saw the headline, and usually, especially these days, it's like there are a lot of rape headlines, especially from my country. So I try to kind of like not read too much into it because it's a lot, honestly. And it made me get to a point where I was like, okay, maybe they're overreacting with this thing because like nobody takes it serious around here. Like nobody, the law does not take it serious, society does not take it serious. Nobody takes the conversation of rape serious around here. Anytime we have a new rape victim, the first thing they do over here is to try to discredit the victim. Even though the perpetrator is not known, even though the man is not known, they first have to defend this unknown man. So, but seeing this headline, like my first thought was like, how is it easier for her to get this to basically be signed up to die than it is for her to get justice? And I was thinking that, okay, maybe if she had gotten justice, maybe she would not have felt the need to leave the world. Like if she had gotten justice, I don't know if she would like that would make her a little bit, that would give her a little bit happiness. So that was my thought regarding the situation. If she had gotten justice, maybe she would still be with us right now. And I felt, I don't know, it's her life, but I felt so bad for her parents. Like I felt so bad for her dad, especially.
I understand. I actually really agree with the point that you made about how it's not taken seriously, because it's not taken seriously in my country. In fact, there is a trope in media. I'm going to be talking about South Asia, but specifically India for this part. There is a trope where every time the sister, it's always the sister of the protagonist. It's never the protagonist herself. There's no female protagonist, but the sister of the protagonist always inevitably gets raped and she kills herself as a part of honor. It's dishonorable to be raped. It brings shame to the family, never mind the fact that the shame should be for the perpetrator. It shouldn't be for the woman who is struggling with this. And you don't really get any rehabilitation. You don't get any emotional help, mental help. You don't, we do have shelters, but it's hard to get into them. They are NGOs, government run, not very good. But the interesting thing for me was when I came across this story, it almost felt like I was watching a movie because we're so used to in my country seeing this kind of story just play out over and over. I wasn't necessarily desensitized as much as I was like, I understand why she did what she did because it's become such a cultural thing, especially in more religious cultures or religious families, where you feel ashamed, even though you didn't do it. This wasn't a choice you made. And in a lot of ways, I felt incredibly angry. In some ways, I even felt angry at myself because I didn't have the courage to go forward, go to trial, do something about what happened to me, other than I guess write a story. And here was someone, and now she wouldn't just be a person who needed help. Now she's going to become a symbol, an emblem, some kind of perfect victim. And you don't really want a person reduced either to a shell of themselves or to an example for what happens when this kind of situation happens. In fact, I was looking into it, and in Spain, in 2022, they had introduced the yes means yes law. But the thing is, when the legislation passed, there were issues insofar as certain sentences were different or reduced. So a lot of what you call them, people who were um, in jail, in prison for committing rape, now they were coming forward and trying to do an appeal and actually getting reduced sentences. Like the most egregious one I saw was a 13-year-old girl's father had raped her and he was supposed to have an 8-year sentence, which, I mean, on the one hand, yes, you should have a good sentence for someone doing that so they don't do it again. But there was no rehabilitation for this child. And now the sentence was reduced to 6 years after appeal. And all the right-wing government just did was kind of put their hands up and say, this is you wanted this kind of government. You wanted this legislation. Now you deal with it. Meanwhile, they were calling for the Minister of Equality to be sacked. And because she was coming forward saying, I think you are using machismo to um, give reduced sentences to perpetrators because you don't take rape seriously. And the same thing I noticed in Italy, for example, Meloni's partner has made a lot of um, victim blaming statements. These are things that come up in every other country that either I've been to or I've heard of. So I wanted to ask you as well, um, what, like, when you think of, even in a hypothetical, getting help or trying to even relay the information that you were hurt or you were raped or sexually assaulted, do you feel safe in your country to bring up that kind of information? Or is it just either taboo or just not worth the trouble?
Is it L? Is it going back to L? Um, Firstly, I just wanted what Esther said there was just so when you said not verbatim, but how my brain registered was how it was the option for her to get euthanasia over actually getting help that she needed. The euthanasia was the easier option for her. And I think, when you look at it that way, it's so sad, and between the UK, Ireland, and Spain, um, the classes in society are a little bit more wider. Um, in the bigger cities, and access to healthcare, access to support via rape crisis centers and different clinics are quite possible, and quite accessible if you can read, if you can write, if you have different access to these types of things. But a lot of the time, women and cases in Spain and Ireland, especially over COVID, where domestic violence increased nearly by over 60%. It was just terrible, and sexual violence towards women. And it's constantly going up in Spain as well, by 22%. But this year alone, just in the first few months. But, I think in my experience anyway, definitely, having having come from a very low income background where, when I was younger, I didn't have access to anything versus when I was older as a woman, the difference in the accessibility was down to what I had in my bank account. And I think that is absolutely devastating for women that don't have the economic positioning in their life, in their environment, in their, society, for whatever reason, possibly because it goes against everything connected to women succeeding, every facet of society. But it was heartbreaking to see and to understand and to really, really, as an adult again, because I was younger when everything else happened, and just as an adult to see that it will literally narrowed down to your financial position as to how much healing you could get, because the Rape Crisis Centre only gives two free therapy sessions, and then after that you're on your own. So while these places do amazing work, they only literally, you don't even remember the first few sessions. It's a blur. So the real work starts a few months afterwards. And when you don't have access to platforms such as therapy, which in Ireland and the UK is roughly, could be 110, 120 an hour upwards. You might get a counsellor for 60 to 80, between 60 to 80 quid for half an hour or 40 minutes. So it's a lot of money if you need a lot of, trauma care and counselling or therapy. So I think that was a big and very upsetting component to on top of everything else, to think about other women that have gone through the same, of which there's huge amounts, unfortunately, and how it literally narrows down to that. It's down to your economic positioning and wherever you are. It's just awful.
Well, I had a question for you, Sangeeta, about what the yes means yes law says. I'm not familiar with it.
Okay. Should I go on?
Yes, please.
Okay. So essentially, I'm paraphrasing a lot just to keep it short, but previously it wasn't very clear that if there is no enthusiastic consent that something is rape. So it was more about how what you call it, how violent something was, very similar to Italy, about whether there was extreme violence or um, if like just a lack of consent was not enough, essentially. Now with the new law, it's like, okay, if it's not an enthusiastic yes, it's a no. So that was essentially the law. That it has to be consensual. If there's a lack of consent, that is rape. So that encompasses more types of rape, right? Like it includes coercion, it includes marital rape because you don't have running consent. And you don't necessarily need to be physically hurt or killed for it to count as rape anymore. But the issue was with the legislation, they had also revised the time duration that you stay in prison for doing the deed for raping someone. So this was, I guess, either not anticipated or it wasn't fully accounted for, but a lot of previously convicted felons, rapists, were able to make an appeal and reduce their sentences based on one or more variables. And that's kind of the reason for why I mentioned, even though there is a law now that should make it easier to get justice, it's actually made it harder to get justice. And the point of the baseline of there is no rehabilitation for someone who goes through this, that's still not accounted for. So you end up in kind of a no-win situation with Spain's law.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. Your original question was, how safe do you feel in your country or area
Yeah.
reporting rape? And I just want to say I'm 71, and the definition of rape has changed over time. And when I was young, there was no such thing as date rape. We'd never heard of that. And so when that happened to me, I didn't myself think I was raped. I thought, oh, I shouldn't have gone into the back of that camper van with that man. It's my fault that he raped me because I shouldn't have been there. And so I believed and internalized these messages. And the same thing, I had an experience with a very lovely man who I do care about, but he kept going when I wanted him to stop, and I didn't hold it against him, but I did eventually recognize that he should have stopped as the culture changed, and I started thinking about it differently, and I tried to talk about it a little, and I on Facebook I made some kind of, I think I must have done it there. I don't fully remember, but I do remember getting attacked by a friend of this man's who said, "What you've done to him. Oh my God, it's so horrible." And it was all about him. Nobody was worried about what happened to me, but they were worried about what I was accusing or calling him. And I was just kind of trying to say, oh, this happened. This wasn't very good. And at the time, it was interesting. Anyway, there was a teacher involved who facilitated this hookup. We were in high school. We were at this teacher's house. We shouldn't have been there. And he was obviously invested in me losing my virginity because I ended up crying and being out in the living room, and he came out to see what was going on with me. So it was all a very creepy, disgusting situation. But I couldn't interpret it as that at the time. So I don't know. I don't think it's safe here. A couple in the United States, I don't think it's safe to say, I was raped, or it's changing. It has been changing. And two other things that came quickly. I'll try and go quickly. One was I heard from Muniba, who's not here, unfortunately, that somebody came to her house and said, what are you doing lately? And she said, I'm writing for a feminist magazine. And he said, you feminists, you say virginity is nothing, it doesn't matter. So why do you care about rape? So, so that
Oh,
was like a shocking point of view. And my friend, when I told it to her, she was like, I bet a lot of men feel that way. Like, so
Yeah.
anyway, that was hard to process. And then also a story we published about a case in Iran where a woman was hanged publicly for being
very-
raped.
mm,
So
mhm.
it's just like unsafe in different degrees everywhere. You know, it could cost your life, or it could cost a big argument, it could cost a friendship, it could cost a public uh, attack online. It doesn't seem safe. And I had a student once who had been gang raped, and she went at a party, she got drunk, and then all the boys raped her, and then she took them to court, and she said they got like 6 weeks of community service for that,
Jesus Christ.
like picking up trash for 6 weeks for 2 hours a day or whatever. So she was horrified by that whole injustice system. She was a freshman when she told me that, so it had happened younger than 15, 14, 13. So anyway, those are my thoughts on that question. How about you, Uwanah?
To answer the question, the reality here is very tough. Oh my God. I've shared this story before of a friend who I followed to the police station to report a rape, and it was just terrible. Like, she was asked, was she a virgin? If like Patsy said, like, men do not, like, if you don't care about virginity, then why are you talking about rape? She was asked, was she a virgin? And they said, okay, if you're not a virgin, then how was it rape? They asked, how much did she fight? If she did not fight, that means she wanted it. They said, did she get wet? That means she wants to, like, it was a lot of interrogation, and they basically did not care. We also reported to the school, and what they did was force her to sit beside him in class so they can make peace. And this was not a secondary school, it was the university. His family was basically harassing her. His aunts were calling her, telling her that she's going to ruin her life if she takes this further. So she should just shut up because nothing is going to happen to him. It's the shame is going to be on her. That's the way it is over here. So she should just keep quiet about this. Her dad invited him to the house because she was trying to like take it to the media and all of that. Her dad invited the rapist to his house and asked her to serve him wine so they can make peace, and she would keep quiet about this because they just wanted her to shut up about this rape. So
Christ.
yeah, reporting rape over here, like the judgment is always for the victim. It's always on the victim, not the rapist. So it's not safe at all. And we also had a rape festival recently, and nothing has been done concerning that. The victims are still sad, traumatized, and even though we have the perpetrators on camera, nothing has been done, and they are not going to do anything about it. So it's not a good situation over here. And also, even marital rape is not recognized in some states in the country because it's at certain laws in this country somehow. Even child marriage is still kind of legal in some parts of the country because we have it's a very religious country and they do respect religions. And the northern part of the country is Islamic. And over there, they try to say that their religion allows them to marry children, and we cannot
What
really do
age?
anything about
What age is it like? From what age?
it. Like 12 years old.
Okay.
And also, what they say is, in terms of marital rape, even though it's a child. Like when they talk about raping children over there in the northern part of the country, they say that as long as they are married, it is not rape.
Mm.
So like consent is immediate once you sign the marriage certificate, I guess, only it's a child. So over here, the reality is quite terrible. Very, very terrible. It's nothing to write home about. The law does not care. People do not care. Recently, we had a girl who came out to talk about how she was raped. She said she was drunk. Like she lost all of her family last year, so she has been going through a lot. And this is when she's not up to 18 years old yet. So she has like now she stays alone. She said every night, so she would be able to sleep, she has to drink a lot. She said that on camera. And instead of showing support for this girl, what they did was basically try to rip her story apart. And it ended with them
Weaponize
saying
that.
she's lying. And she could not say anything anymore because after they ripped the story apart, she was like, she cannot remember because she was drunk. She just knows somebody came to her room and did something to her. And it also tore her with a blade. And the tear was there. So they were like, okay, maybe it's somebody she's saying or something. So the whole thing just died down. No matter how horrific the story is, no matter how horrific, how traumatic the rape story is, they do not care. They always have to protect the reputation of the man.
I feel like Uwanah, Nigeria and India are very similar when it comes to a lot of pretty much everything that you said in some part is something that's happened where I'm from. So essentially, marital rape still legal. And because child marriage is technically not legal, but it is kind of allowed based
Yeah.
on a variety of factors. Once she is married, forcefully, she is married, she can no longer claim rape because it's legal. Um, Other than that, I grew up in the Middle East, so specifically in the UAE. I was born and raised in Dubai, so it was a really strange time being a child there because they followed an arbitrary, I think, religious law, which said that you cannot claim rape without at least a few witnesses, male witnesses, but witnesses nonetheless, to testify, because testimony is how they proved whether you were raped or not. Um, so a lot of times, if you were not able to get them, inevitably you will not be able to get someone to testify that it was not rape because people don't usually tend to stand there and watch, right? Women would be jailed, victims would be jailed for committing adultery and fornicating. So not only are you not getting the help you need, you are being essentially crucified. And women are getting jailed and then deported if they are not Arab. Usually, when it comes to Arabs, you don't even hear the cases. They don't even make it to the numbers. But if you're local, but if you're foreign, you get jailed. You get basically displaced from your home. And now you have to deal with the consequences, pick up your life or whatever is left of it now. So that was the UAE. And Italy has just not been that much better. Unless the woman dies, they
Mm.
don't even really see it as it can't be that bad, right? It can't. That's the way that it's treated. For example, I still think of that young girl, she was 19 at the bar, and the bartender helped these boys to get her drunk and give her a drug in her drink and gang rape her outside of the bar. Um, it was a terrible thing, and everyone from the media to the parents of the rapists, the perpetrators, were blaming her. And it's just such a culture of it that I actually agree also with the point that Linda made about class is a huge thing because if you are not moneyed, you can't get the help you need, you can't get the lawyers you need. You can't get anything really. But also not being of the right country, because when it happened to me, it was a European. I am not European. I don't have a European passport. I can't really take him to court because, firstly, it's his word against mine. And then beyond that, I don't really have any rights. Until I got my residency not that long ago, I don't really have any rights. It's just, oh, you don't like it here, leave. They don't say it to you in those words, but that is what they mean. And so I feel at once kind of seen and extremely saddened by the fact that nobody said, yes, I would feel at least partway safe. Even just telling friends and family like Patsy, you couldn't even put it as a post on Facebook. That's a really terrible place to be. In fact, something that I can't remember if it was Linda or Uwanah, but I think Linda, you mentioned about COVID and how things got even worse. There is a
Mm.
statistic by the UN that natural disasters and war increase the likelihood of sexual violence against women fivefold, eightfold even. And
All that
so,
testosterone.
and it's just such a terrible statistic. When I first learned about it, I thought to myself, so this is basically about opportunity. And when we have a case like Noelia's, where she, the only person who really had the consequence was the victim. I
Mm.
cannot find any information about what happened to the three rapists. I can't even really
None.
find out much. Yeah, I can't even find out much about the former partner who raped her. I cannot
Yeah.
find if there was any justice there. All I know is, oh, she was suffering and she wanted it to end, and I'm supposed to feel bad and then go on with my day. So, something that I wanted to ask now is where where would we go with this? If, for example, just a hypothetical, if you could change one thing about the system as you know it in your country, if you could, even if it's whether it's rehabilitation or just stopping men or anything, what would be one thing that you think would genuinely make a positive difference in the lives of women vis-a-vis sexual assault?
I think the handling of it, I think, especially for women who have been attacked by men, that it's predominantly the teams that are there to look after them in whether it's public or private, that they're women, that they feel safe amongst other women. Because men, their wolf pack mentality, they will always, you know, give a dig out. I mean, there was my God, I just skimmed on this report yesterday about the Northern Irish police. It wasn't in the south, but it was in Northern Ireland, where over 30% of the police force have been in some way or another, 30% of the police force committed sexual assault or assault. 30%. So that's the very men that women are going to try and protect them. And I laugh when I'm a little bit stressed, so I'm not a sadist, but like it's just it it never ceases to amaze me, these stats that come out. And I mean there was one that I read yesterday as well. I just have it here about child marriage has surged in Gaza since the war, and you just touched on that there. That there's so far there's over the United Nations Population Fund has revealed a sharp rise in child marriages and teen pregnancies in Gaza since the start of the conflict in October 2023. Over a 4-month period in 2025, 400 girls aged between 14 to 16 were granted child marriage permissions, and they only represent a fraction of people that are actually registered. So, you always see this type of thing during war where, the rage, the violence, it all is portrayed and expelled and expunged from men in different ways. And women and young girls seem to be always get the blunt of it. And it's terrible. I mean, there's very little that you can do in very war-torn, conflicted countries where, on a government level, on a leadership level, they simply don't have the prerogative, they don't have the intention, they don't have remotely any interest in protecting women in any capacity, shape, or form. Um, so yeah, I mean, geographically speaking, I think from just the conversation up until now, I think the only difference with more European Western um, culture is the age of marriage, because otherwise the attacks, the assaults, the rapes, the pedophilia, it's all very common. It's always been. It's like in Ireland, someone will say, "Oh, do you know someone who's an alcoholic?" But you go, if you know someone who's been abused as a child, or if you know someone that's been attacked or assaulted, every single woman will say, "Yeah, I know someone," or else it's them. Quite like more than they'd say, "Oh yeah, I know an alcoholic now," because the culture has shifted. But it's just terrifying, and what has to change? Put a curfew on men after a certain period of the night, so at least at the night time we're safe. And I mean, we have absolutely millions of data sets over the course of decades that clearly stipulate and have the absolute pure 100% data that is needed to, in no two ways, confirm that women are unsafe. When it comes to walking alone at nighttime. We're all told to put our keys between our hands, to jogging with headphones on down a lane. Don't go that way. No, don't go that way. Ring me when you get home. Don't walk to your car on your own. Don't leave this. Get someone to walk you home. Like I think that's across the board. I don't think there's a single country in the world where no girl has grown up and not been told to don't walk down a dark road on your own. Don't put in headphones. Don't do this. Don't do that. What are men being told? Are they being sat down and told, right, when you get to a certain age and you hear other boys bragging about getting the ride in Ireland, that's what it's called, getting the leg over, losing your virginity, very, very formal way of putting it. It's quite more cruder than that. And none of that is spoken about across men. So I think men have a lot to do. I don't think women, we can't do, like, what more can we do? We have, like, there's been feminists throughout all of time, from medieval times up until now, that have tried and been, silenced. We need men, unfortunately. We need men to step up, and we need them to actually take accountability. If not for other people, but like, themselves as part of a huge half of the race of, species on the planet. There was a guy that commented after the Noelia Castillo case, and he literally said something that really resonated. And I said, my God, if more men could actually admit this. But basically, he just said the actual headlines left out what happened to her, and more importantly, the names of those who did it. As a man, if you're not willing to call out the wrongs of other men, then you are not a safe man to be around. And that really, I mean, talk about nail on the head. And that's a guy saying that. And he's the only guy, like even at the post that we put up on Why Not Her, I work with a feminist organization that I founded a few years back. And we highlight a lot of these issues, and we work with government on different policies and that. And we put up a post on the first article that I wrote, and it's now got over 700,000 views. But it started kind of trending across different boards and stuff like that. But literally, I probably could count the amount of men that have commented. There's just silence, tumbleweed. And if anybody does comment, like I shared the post on LinkedIn as well. And I mean, I've never had to block people on LinkedIn. But after posting this, I had to block so many men because they just did not get it. They were just so aggressive. And oh my God, the comments were like, I actually should have screen grabbed them to share them. But it was just mind blowing as to the lack of accountability and the lack of believing this girl. Like whether they were, oh, well, she wasn't right in the head to start with. Oh, she had problems. Or who chose themselves off a window? Like, oh yeah, she's only making this up. Why didn't she go to the police? Like the amount of things, I just like block, delete. And some of these men were like CEOs of companies So it is across the board. I think that we talk about what's it like in your country, what's it like in your country. It's the same in every single country. I think the only difference is the age in terms of the limit of child marriage. And in a lot of states in the US, child marriage has been introduced at 14. And a lot of Americans aren't aware of that since Trump put that in. And to protect some of his people in government so that they can't be tried under different different states for things that they did. So men protect themselves. They always will. Again, they're wolf pack. They always protect themselves. But if we had a rogue wolf pack of bloody strong warrior men that actually step up and say, "Do you know what? This isn't right. There's something fundamentally wrong. These women are life bearers. They put us here. So we have to respect them and to, understand that yes, we have physical power over them, but it doesn't mean that we have to have dominion over them. So I think we can go for all the changes we want. We can express all of our sorrows, our grief, our suffering, our trauma. But if men don't actually see it, if they don't feel it, if they don't recognize themselves in it, because it affects everybody, it affects children growing up whose parents have been affected by it, whose aunts, whose sisters, whose daughter, it affects everybody, not just women. But I think men, which is weird because I think men are the only ones that are going to get us out of this.
I think you're right. And I was reminded of a student I had who had said to me, a young man in his teens, that, oh, I would love to be raped. I'd love if a woman would follow me down an alley and jump on me and have sex with me. And what gets lost here, and what I would like to change, is men's understanding of rape. I said, okay, but what if it was a man who was
Mm.
bigger and stronger than you, following you down the alley and going to rape you, even though you said no, even though you didn't want it? That's what I want what I want to change is men's understanding of rape. Because, like that person who came into Muniba's house, he thinks rape doesn't exist, that the women actually want to have sex, and they just say no as a performance, or to pretend they're not
That sounds
horny,
like a
or
Donald Trump quote.
yeah.
I mean, I think it is. I think it is.
Yeah, but so I think men need to understand, to think of rape as being raped by another man, honestly. To think being penetrated, being being overpowered, being pushed to something they don't want. That's what rape is. So imagine a broomstick up your ass and then tell
Mm.
me you don't care about rape, and rape is nothing, and rape doesn't mean anything, by somebody, someone you don't know, you don't love, you haven't said, yeah, let's go to. So that's what I would like to change. And I also think about, I was interested about your statistic about police on our masthead on Fourth Wave. There's a woman holding a sign, and in Spanish it says, no cuidan se violan, or something like that, which means you don't protect us, you rape us, because
Yeah.
that's what was happening in prisons there. And that's why they were having this protest. Some women in
Mm.
Mexico had a protest, and that sign is part of our masthead now. And the other thing that's interesting to me is that in media, men always won't have this role of protector. There are so many movies where the father is saving the daughter who's been kidnapped, or the wife has been kidnapped, or the girlfriend, and they're the protector. But they don't protect us. And if they would really internalize that role and do what Linda was suggesting, shame other men and exclude other men who are misogynist, and say, that's not okay. It's not okay, and push them out, then that would have an impact if they could honestly take on that role of protector. But But they don't. It's true. You don't protect us, you rape us. And that needs to change. And you need to redefine what rape means. It doesn't mean what you think it does. And that's why so many people are confused. I also saw a story by Linda Carroll where she said on this study, they asked men, would you rape a woman? No. Would you force a woman to have sex? Yes. So they just don't even know what it means. So anyway, those were several thoughts that came up. What I would like to change, if I could, would be men's understanding of what rape is and men's identity as protector. Ask them and encourage them to take that on seriously, not just for my daughter, my wife, but for all vulnerable people. Are you protectors? Are you the good guys, or are you the bad guys? What's it going to be? That's what I want to know.
I think just on that, like, yeah, women are considerably overexposed and underbelieved, and men are underexposed and overcontextualized. And what's terrifying is that this is across the board in media as well. And also, we're looking at in the US where there's just a total monopoly now of the media with men that were featured in the Epstein files. And that is a further, even now, I mean, even just being on this call, to be honest, like on a personal level, as a survivor and as a victim of multiple sexual assaults, I wouldn't be here only for in the last, I don't know, what would we say, 4 or 5 months where women have started to come together. Like, I'm kind of backtracking now when I'm saying only men can help us, because like we are actually talking more to each other. We're talking about our own traumas, what happened, to each other, and we're sharing them, whether it's to one-on-one or whether it's to a collective, whether it's to a group. And because of that, we're called feminists. Like, but there's people that have, got in touch with Why Not Her after this post went viral. I mean, hundreds of women, and they've shared their story, and there's a few of us that look after that account. And I mean, none of us are therapists. So we would always, advise them to seek help if they need it and whatnot. But just kind of the solidarity that is here, I have not felt that before. I've not felt that on such a grand global scale. And with the tech revolution constantly evolving with AI, with social media, and now social media really pushing, because they have done the surveillance thing, right? They have that tracked, they have everything there. Now what they need to do is, and what they're rolling out across Instagram, is this friends side of, so say for instance you have your followers and then you have the people you follow, but now there's a third component where it's friends. So say for instance if you have 100,000 followers and you follow 5,000 people, your friends will be the actual amount of these people in your overall network that you connect with. So if you have 100,000 followers and you're following a couple of thousand people, but you only have like 50 friends, that means that you're only putting in the time and effort to talk to 50 people on a regular level across your social media. So they're almost pushing this agenda now. Well, they are. And it's going to start really being pushed out a lot in the next few weeks, definitely over the next year, where now the metric system of societal popularity and your gain will be how many people you talk to. So with that in mind, and with that psychological shift that's happening and has been pushed out by Meta, um, it might go against men and their agenda because it will actually prompt more and more women to start talking to one another, because women are always targeted with campaigns such as marketing and your what you look like, your metric system of popularity and whatnot. And it actually might be a hidden a hidden positive in all of this surveillance that's been going on and that will continue to go on a bigger scale as AI evolves. So yeah, I think I'd like to add that in just before we go to the next person. But yeah, I mean, men always underexposed, overcontextualized, but with women coming together, we're exposing more. We're not lying. We're sharing our stories more and more, and therefore we're being more within the context. So and that's what I love what Fourth Wave is doing. Like I mean, I've been looking at some of the videos before tonight, and reading as much as I could over the last while at the different stories on Medium. And I just think it's brilliant. It's empowering, and it's it's actually given me more hope in the last like kind of 2 week period than I have felt in a very long time, to be quite honest. And I kind of joined a lot of feminist collectives and stuff over the years, and I have one, and we've reached millions of people with our but it's more kind of music industry and data stuff related. It's not kind of lived experience without the data kind of stuff, you know. So it's been wonderful, and I think this is definitely we're on to something here, and there is a change happening and a current definitely in flow that I haven't felt before. I don't know about your yourselves, but I definitely feel that that is more prominent than it has been.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, Uwanah, let's hear from you as well. Do you know the question? Should I say it again?
No, I do not know the question.
Okay,
My
so what?
network has been really bad. I've been going on and off.
Okay, first of all, I'm so sorry about that. But basically, the question is, if there was something that you could change, it doesn't need to be in your power, by the way, just a hypothetical. What is one thing that, if changed, you would feel safer or women would feel safer out in the world? That's the question.
Okay. Okay, recently, as a cut of one of my male friends, is a really good guy. Like, is a really good man. I don't know what they call good, but he's a really good man.
Jesus.
And he was he was telling me a story of because he has this mentor he's really close to. He does not have a dad, so he has a male mentor he's really close to. And he was telling me how this his mentor has been countlessly accused of sexual assaults by is a pastor by women in the church. I was like, okay, so like you're hearing all of this, and why is this still your mentor then? He said it does not care, like it does not affect his relationship with him. So, like, why should he care? Like, that's their business. So I had to cut him off because of that, because in church. And it was a lot of members, basically, like, it's not their business. It doesn't affect their relationship with this pastor. So it's not their business, basically. And that's the same thing I was doing. And he's a good man. So if I'm to change anything, is this all not all men narrative? Like if you do not want to be grouped into with the rapists, with the men who are violent, like you have to actually be actively advocating for women. Like you
Mhm.
have to be standing up, you have to be speaking up for women. You have to actually do something when stories are going around of this person you're close with, this your friend sexually assaulting a woman. Like you cannot just I believe silence is compliance. So you cannot be neutral. So for me, it's all men, except the ones who are actively advocating for women. So I'm into this because if you are not actively advocating for the rights of women, not so, if you're not standing up for the women that are just around you, you are surely part of the people who are trying to fight against. Because you cannot like, and these are not one random women that this guy does not know. These are women who he interacts with on a weekly basis. And they have had to like leave the church because of the situation with the pastor. They accuse him of sexual assault, and he's like, it at first he thought they were lying. And I was like, how will so many people be lying against this one man? But they all lying against him. I was like, okay, even if they are not lying, it's not his business. And these are women who get his friends. So if you are not actively advocating for the rights of this woman, then you are part of the perpetrators. I'm sorry. So if I'm to change anything, it's just change the not all men narrative.
Yeah.
Actually, honestly, all of you had such incredible points. I'm gonna make a final point, and I think we are kind of past time, and we'll start to wrap up. Um, when I was coming up with this question, I was kind of scared of even saying it because, like Linda said, isn't everything that's already happening to try and stop violence against women something that women are doing, something that we are trying to change? Um, but at the same time, now listening to a lot of the responses that you've given, everything from, like Uwanah said, the narrative shift from not all men, and even what Patsy said about just just all of these answers made me realize the thing, if I could really change it, would be also the narrative that violence is natural for men, and so we cannot crucify them for doing it. I feel like, because when I think of myself, and I feel like a lot of people would say the same, rehabilitation sounds amazing, but so much of the time you just wish it didn't fucking happen. Sorry, I swore. You just wish it didn't happen to you, right? You just wish you didn't have to go through that, because it doesn't do anything. I don't want this to be a part of my character arc, for lack of a better term. And so if I could change it, it would be that when a man has this instinct, like that instinct becomes something so disgusting for him, so dirty, that he goes and gets rehabilitation himself. He goes and gets those, whatever it takes, therapy, whatever else, because it shouldn't come to a point where there is a woman in a therapist's office crying, or another woman who has tried to commit suicide already and is now paraplegic, begging to state, please let me go. This shouldn't exist. We shouldn't be in a space where we uh feel like we need to come up with solutions for something we didn't cause. This shouldn't happen to us. If I could just change the narrative around, oh, men just being men, it's just the hormones and stuff like that, and kind of writing it off as this is normal, and women should get used to it at this point. What's There's a quote from a movie that I grew up with where the man says, what is so terrible about what's happening to you right now that hasn't already happened before? Vis-a-vis, he's talking about sex, and then conflating rape to that sex that she's had before and is consensual. And it's it's such a strange part of life, because it was so normal to me to pretend it didn't happen. Every single time I would just go like, I can't be that person. I can't even call myself a victim. I don't want to be that person. And all the shame should be around even committing the act. If I could shift that one change, I feel like would make all of this okay, and I would genuinely feel better, even if it happened now after the fact, after everything I've been through and everybody else has went through. Even if it happens now, I think if it went away completely, and I knew for a fact that no other woman was going to go through this again, I think I would be okay with that. I would be happy about it. And I would wake up one day and feel like life is great again. There's blue skies and I feel alive. So yes, once again, thank you so much to all of you for being here, for sharing your thoughts, and for bringing so much insight. And so sorry again about Muniba not being able to be here. I know she would have had a lot of interesting things to say, especially from a Pakistani South Asian point of view. But I think this was a really great discussion. And yeah, that's it from us.
Thanks for hosting.
Thank you.
Fabulous. Thanks for coming. And great to see everyone. And we'll see you next week.
Take care.